Listen, there are a lot of podcasts about the Black church in the vein of Larry Reed and King Jives.
Yikes.
But if you're looking for a podcast about the Black church that's thoughtful, informative, substantive, stimulating, then you need to subscribe to Black Church Chats. That's right. I need you to hit that subscribe button and then also hit the notification bell so that you'll know every time we go live. All right, on to the show.
Okay, here we are. Black Church Chats in the morning. Well, it's the morning for me. It's 9 a.m. here in Southern California. If you're on the East Coast, it is the early afternoon for you. And yes, we are on live now. Welcome, 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 welcome. I already see y'all in the chat section. I see my dear sis, Melody, who's holding it down, one of the mods holding it down. I see my brother, Rick Barboa. Salute to you. God bless you as well. So I got two mods holding it down. I see Steel Pulse in here, who is my cousin as well. What's up, cousin? Good to see you. Yes. You listen, y'all know I like my podcast like I like my preaching. Talk back to me. Get up in the comment section. Shout out, holla. Now, my environment is different. Uncle Pete, let's go. My aunties, my auntie Melissa, my auntie Millicent, they're on here as well. Hey, Cynthia, one of our best members at a New Congregational Missionary Baptist Church. Y'all are here. Y'all are in the building this morning. Listen, of course, I have a different environment today. No background with the wonderful pictures. I'm not in my office. I am actually at a hotel in Orange County. My wife and I, we celebrated our 12th wedding anniversary yesterday. Yay, 12 years. Yay. And so we came out to Orange County to eat. We stayed overnight. And shout out to my wife for giving me the green light to do this podcast this morning. I was all prepared to cancel, to tell Matthew that, hey, it's the day after my anniversary. But my wife, who's a huge supporter of my ministry and the podcast, she's like, no, go for it, because she knows how much I love this guest that I'm going to bring on today. She knows how much of a fan I am of his work. And so she was like, no, go for it. I know it's the day after our anniversary, but she is excited about this conversation that we're having today. So she gave the green light. So shout out to my wife. That's right. Sister Cynthia says we love when our pastor and first lady get a breakaway. Yeah, we don't often get rest or breaks, but we took one and we had a great evening. That's right. Just passing through. I have to say my congrats. Thank you so much. Mr. Formerly known as. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. All right. On to the show. Welcome to Black Church Chats. I'm your host, Pastor Isaiah, and I am excited about our guest today. Our guest today does phenomenal work. And if you've been watching this podcast for a while, then you know that I am all for embracing non-Black allies and accomplices, non-Black supporters and friends. That advocating for the Black church does not mean being racist, showing ethnic partiality. No, the Black church has always been an institution that has been accepting to all people. The Black church, from its inception in this country, has been all about the Imago Dei and the recognition of the Imago Dei in all people. And so, being an advocate of the Black church does not mean shunning those of different ethnicities. We welcome white people, Hispanic people, Asian people into our churches, and we also welcome them to the cause of freedom and justice. And when I say that this man is an accomplice and the work that he is doing is phenomenal, y'all, you're going to see in just a second. As a matter of fact, he produced a documentary that's just released on Amazon Prime called Sins of Our Fathers. It is an amazing documentary. I've already seen it a few times. And I just want to give you a taste of that documentary now. So check out this trailer for the documentary that is now. You can go and see it now. Well, not now. After the podcast, you can go see this documentary. Check this out.
Religion is a powerful thing. People who have tried to maintain control throughout the history of the world have used religion to keep people together around their agenda. And that is part of the American story that we can't overlook.
Yeah, I'm one of those 81% of evangelicals who voted for Trump in 2016.
Did you vote for him again in 2020 or 2024?
No.
What happened?
We need a recognition of the power of history to explain the present.
So there has to be this repentance. There has to be this coming to understand that we are wrong, and definitely not utilize religion to further our own private and political gain.
The sins of our fathers are visited upon us generation after generation because they've become the habits of our bodies and the habits of the communities that we exist in.
So y'all, I want to introduce to you and present to others a great brother in Christ. Y'all give it up for Matthew Pridgen, y'all. Woo, 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 woo. I wish I had those sound effects. Wah, 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 right? Applause. Matthew.
What's up?
What's going on, man? How are you?
Hey, I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
Listen, the honor is all ours. The work that you are doing is phenomenal. Your just persistence, your call for righteousness is loud and is being heard. And Doc, I just want to say, as somebody that advocates for the Black church, for justice, for equity, Doc, thank you for what you're doing. How did you get into this work?
Well, so I like to, make sure that I'm framing my story in a way that's relevant because there's so many layers to it. But I just want to start by, addressing sort of that trailer. I did vote for Trump in 2016. I'm a lifelong Republican. I came out of a very conservative evangelical Christian world. I got saved 20 years ago in a very radical way and just really went hard for Jesus, right away. And, I was in that vein of white conservative evangelicalism. And then 13 years ago, my wife and I joined a Black church. We were there primarily actually because of homeless ministry. That was my passion, was homeless ministry. And this church was right in the middle of the East Side neighborhood of downtown Charleston. This neighborhood was actually settled by slaves after the War of 1812. Historically Black community, very historically poor. There was a resurgence actually in the late 1800s. There was a factory that was built there, but for the last, after that factory closed, the neighborhood really plunged into poverty even deeper. And so we walked, my wife and I, both white, walk into a Black church. And I just remember sitting with the pastor, he's actually from Brooklyn, and he's in his 80s now. He was in his 70s at that time. And he was the first person who really discipled me, not just in the Bible, but in Black history. And I remember sitting in his office, and he was an amazing guy. We would sit for hours. I mean, it wasn't like, hey, here's an hour, and then, you're gone. Because what I was processing was so deep and so much. But I just remember weeping, being in his office and weeping as I was learning about the atrocities of slavery and Jim Crow. And I accredit that. That was sort of the beginning of this journey for me. With the reason I did vote for Donald Trump in 2016, but when watching him for those first 4 years, and then certainly watching The Big Lie in 2020 and January 6th, I already had so much historical framework inside of me because of that discipleship in that Black church, that when all of my friends and my church went all in for Trump, when he took us off the map of truth, and that's a really important point, that there was no evidence, there still has never been any evidence presented that election was stolen, but in spite of what our eyes and ears told us, we listened to him. We went, this white evangelical Christian world went off the map of truth with Trump, who is a known liar and con man. But I literally accredit that discipleship to the reason why I was able to see through him. And so to me, I feel deeply indebted to the Black church, and that one particular Black church in general, but there's a bigger thread here. What the Black church has done throughout history is the Black church has maintained the prophetic voice of speaking truth to power. So in during the abolition movement, the Black Christians in this nation were steadfast. They said this is evil. They didn't waver. They didn't use the Bible to justify it as white Christians were doing, because we have to remember that slavery was an economic institution. So the white people were benefiting from it, and they were using the Bible to justify it. All throughout the Jim Crow era, the Black church was the moral voice consistently all through the civil rights era. And then, all the way up to the George Floyd protests. One of the things I have said that is historically, factually true, that the ICE raids that we're seeing today, the only reason why we have a legal basis for what we're doing is because of the war on drugs we practiced for 40 years on the Black community. And it wasn't seen. It was under the radar because it was in poor Black neighborhoods where there's not a lot of white representation. And the only representation they got was the mugshot on the nightly news, right? And that was no accident. Michelle Alexander in her book, The New Jim Crow, she cited a study where they asked people, Black and white, close your eyes and picture a drug criminal. And can you imagine what the result was?
Yeah, it was
95% of people pictured a young black man, even though Black and white people do drugs about the same amount.
Yep.
So it was this propaganda, but anyway, the point is that all throughout that era of the war on drugs, the Black community was speaking truth to power. They were maintaining the prophetic voice of speaking up for the marginalized and the oppressed, and recognizing that biblical call. And one of the things I believe very, very wholeheartedly. And again, I am a Christian. My point is not to turn people away from Jesus, but to call people to reformation, particularly white Christians to reformation. But we as the white Christian community have forfeited our prophetic voice because we have profited off of oppression rather than speaking out against it. As long as my 401k is growing, I don't care if I have, stocks that build prisons or make guns and bombs and planes. That's how these 401ks grow. If you buy an S&P 500, share for your portfolio, military contractors, prison, companies, private defense, all that stuff is in there. So unfortunately, because we have profited off of oppression from slavery to Jim Crow to today, we have not been able to speak truth to power in the way that the Bible and Jesus has called us to. But the Black church has maintained that thread. And so one of my passions is it's like a total flip flop where we have said to the Black community, "Oh, you guys are the poor and a drag, like your wealth, you pull on welfare." I'm like, it's the opposite. It's literally the opposite, where the Black church has maintained the moral integrity of this nation, the moral plumb line for 400 years. And so, I see it very differently, I think, than a lot of people do.
And you know what? This podcast, I entitled it intentionally, What the Black Church Taught Me. Matthew Pridgen on race, faith, and courage. And you're exemplifying courage to say what you're saying as a white evangelical, right? You're not like a theological liberal, right? Where it's like, okay, well, this guy is, he's beholden to German higher criticism. He's like Jim Wallace, or, he doesn't even believe in the authority of the scriptures. You are a Bible believing Christian, and you're not towing the line as a white man. You are standing up and you are speaking out, and you are, if I might say this, using your privilege to draw attention to what a lot of white evangelicals have been blind to for centuries. And what we talk privately. We've already built rapport privately, and I really enjoyed our conversation. But what type of pushback do you get from other white Christians?
Oh yeah, I mean, I get it all the time. So exactly what you said. I think everything they called Martin Luther King Jr., they call me. So I'm a communist, I'm a Marxist, I'm a liberal, I'm a radical left liberal lunatic, or whatever. I'm a Bible believing Christian. What's so interesting about American Christianity is that there's all of these very inherent contradictions. Like if you look at Matthew chapter 23, where Jesus talks to the Pharisees, almost every single one of the things he said to the Pharisees applies to the white church in America. We're whitewashed tombs, beautiful on the outside, full of dead men's bones. One of my favorite ones that really applies to the Trump era is you strain out a gnat, but swallow a camel. Yeah. So we're like all these ticky-tack things, but we're like, oh, we love Trump. And you're like, wait a second, that doesn't make a lot of sense. But what's interesting about my story, so I get tons and tons of hate. I'm okay with that. Because Jesus said, blessed are you when others curse you and revile you and utter all kinds of evil falsely against you on my account, because they did it to the prophets. And again, going back to what we're saying, the Black church has been carrying the prophetic witness. And really, I don't know what would happen in America if we didn't have the Black church carrying that moral thread. I'm afraid for what would happen, right? Yeah. And I think there's a lot of white people, especially in the liberal movement, and me as a conservative, or more, I'm biblically conservative. Whatever conservative means in the political era, it doesn't even mean that anymore. But the point is, so many white people have pulled on the prophetic threads of the Black community. We've read these books like The New Jim Crow and Caste and White Fragility. Well, White Fragility was written by a white lady, but again, we're all pulling on these threads. The cross and the lynching tree. Just pulling on the wisdom, pulling on the courage, pulling on the nonviolent activism. That's really been the blueprint for the liberal movement, even though we don't always give that credit. Yeah. But going back to what you said, this is what's interesting to me, the irony to me, because again, going back to where this started, we joined a Black church 13 years ago. But the real turning point for me was we started a mentorship group. My wife and I started a mentorship group in an inner city neighborhood, in that East Side neighborhood for kids. And it was all from Project Housing 11 years ago. And it was the Bible that informed me to go into that community. It was the call of Scripture to go into that community. And ironically, the call of Scripture is sort of what turned me, into a different direction in my faith. My faith is not theology. My faith is, how can we help the people who are suffering in this nation? How can we help? Because, we started this mentorship group, and I remember very early on, the thought the Lord gave me was this: there are always going to be people in the State House. There's always going to be people in DC who are advocating for kids who look like my kids. My wife and I have 4 children. But who's advocating for these kids, born in the projects? One of the shocking things that came out in the film is we were interviewing a friend of mine. he was like, man, I started getting searched by the police when I was like 10, 11, 12 years old. And I'm thinking, because I have a 13-year-old son and I have twin 11-year-old sons. And I'm thinking, what on earth would I do as a parent if a police officer stopped my child and patted him down and treated him like an enemy? He's a kid. He's a child, you know? And that, to hear that consistent thread from my Black friends, just all of the stories, the insane stories, and they're never the same. They're always different, but they're always insane about how, hey, just because of the color of my skin, I'm like an enemy of this state. I was born here, you know, I lived here my whole life, but I'm perceived by the state as an enemy, as a threat, as a, you know, someone who's suspicious. And it's like, you know, white people don't really see that for the most part. And it's systematic, and you can say whatever you want that racism ended in the civil rights era, but I think what Trump is doing, he's kind of pulling the mask off. I remember in the Obama era, people were like, "Oh, we're in a post-racial society. It's true." But you know what? Racism just was hiding under the surface.
That's right.
You know, as Jamar Tisby says, racism never dies; it just evolves.
That's
right? So
right.
now the resurgence of it, we're like, wow, look, this thing never went away. It was never dealt with. And if we don't deal with it, this is what I believe. If we don't deal with it as a society, there's never going to be a political solution until we have a heart change. Because the reality is, we as the very core human piece of all of this is that white people and white Christians, we don't really listen to Black people. We don't listen to the lived Black experience of my very dear friend who's talking about being searched by the police as a kid, you know, or being pulled over by the police or whatever it is. It's so much to it, so many layers, being passed up for the promotion. You know, we always say, oh, you're pulling the race card, whatever. It's like, at what point will these stories like compile to the point where we realize it's not about a race card. It's not about, you know, us playing Black people playing the victim. It's about justice, because it's systemic, and it has been systemic for 400 years, even longer, you know, and we've got to deal with it, or we're literally going to tear each other apart as a nation.
Yeah. Y'all, listen, if you need to share this broadcast, you need to invite your network in. I know it's earlier than normal, but y'all, this conversation is fire. Shout out to my friend and brother, Rick Barboa. He says, God bless you, brothers. He also dropped a $20 super chat. Thank you so much, Rick. Appreciate you. Man, you guys are already burning up the comment section, and I love it, because y'all know I like my podcast like I like my preaching. Y'all talk back. And y'all are talking back. Miss 4th of July melody. I love it. Y'all keep it going. Listen, Matthew, not only are you a film creator, but you're also pretty prolific in these social media streets. You know, it seems like every day you are curating, producing wonderful shorts and clips on TikTok, YouTube, where you're just speaking truth, man. Where you're just, you know, shedding light on things that most people are unaware of. And I want to show the audience some of your clips. Actually, the way that I discovered your ministry, Matthew, is a guy DM'd me one of your clips. Okay. He was like, hey, listen to this, and you may want to think about responding to him. And you were talking about how, like, you're amazed by how, like, Black Christians by and large didn't fall for Trump, right, whereas white evangelicals by and large did. And you were asking like what's the difference? And then you came back with the response video to that video where you kind of explained some differences. And so from that point, I started digging into your content, watching your clips, and you've got some clips, man, that I absolutely love. And so I want to play one of them, and then let's talk about it on the other side. Check this clip out, y'all.
The comments I get a lot is from white Christians who love Jesus, but who don't feel comfortable attending pro-Trump or MAGA-leaning churches. And what they're looking for is a Bible-believing church that is eyes open about Trump and what he's doing, usually more progressive politically, but still morally conservative. And the answer is that these churches are literally everywhere. They're called Black churches. It's where I go every Sunday, and they really are a refuge from the MAGA political storm that we're in. They love Jesus, they're not hoodwinked by Trump, and they know how to worship. But the crazy thing is that 90% of the time I go to these churches, because I visit a lot of black churches in my area, I'm the only white person there. So apparently the secret's not out, but I'm telling y'all, if it does get out, we're going to have a revival on our hands.
So why do you think that is, Doc? You have discovered what so many white evangelicals haven't taken the time to even consider.
Right.
Why? Yeah, let's talk about it.
That's
and I love that. I hear the exasperation. You're like, let's talk about it. Go ahead.
No, it's definitely a sensitive subject. I do want to go back to one thing you said, and then I'm going to answer this question.
Yeah.
I live in Charleston, South Carolina. So we're the heart of the Deep South. We were the first state to secede from the Union. First shots of the Civil War fired in our city. We have a lot of deep racial history. Almost 50% of all slaves imported into the entire United States came through the port of Charleston. We were the biggest port on the East Coast, second biggest port to New York. So it's interesting because racism is built into everything, the entire geography of. I can go through our city and I can tell you how racism literally. I mean, the whole city is based on white flight. Essentially, it was reorganized during white. You can tell where white people live and where black people live because of white flight. That's just the reality of it. I don't want to go too deep into that, but the point is, when you're talking about when I made that video about black people, this not the one you played, but black people who can see through Trump and white people who can't. I'm talking about from personal experience. I'm not watching a news report about that. I can go to almost any black person that I'm friends with or even acquaintances, or like just this morning, I'm talking to a lady at Walgreens, and like there's a lot of synergy because they see what I see about Trump. But when I talk to white people, it's like pulling teeth. They're like, wow, Trump's not that bad. I really like most of his agenda, but yeah, he's kind of rough around the edges. And you're like, rough around the edges does not capture Donald Trump. Something about this man is extremely deceptive to a lot of white people. I'm not discounting. There's plenty of white people that are awakened to it, but mostly white Christian people that I talk to, it's like, even if they give me like a little bit of he's kind of rough. It's like, it's not like you're not seeing the substance of it. Right. And that to me is what's so scary. Going back to your question, I the reason why I sigh is because I'm like, I just don't understand why, we are so reluctant to go into these spaces. The one thing I will say is that it is uncomfortable being the only white person going into a black space, but it's like, we're so used to there being one black person in a white space. Yep. Like we would never think twice about there being one black person in our white church. Mm-hmm. But, if we are, so one of the things I actually enjoy is I like going into a black church and remembering, oh, this is how that one black person feels in my white space. Mm-hmm. It's just, it's just a reminder for me. Like, but by the time I leave, I never feel that way. I never feel that way. I might feel that way when I walk in, but by the time I leave, I never feel that way because I've always been so welcomed. And actually, after the Emanuel 9 shooting, which happened in Charleston as well, and we included that in the film, I was wondering, I'm like, man, I don't know how I'm going to be received in black churches after that. But it was always the same. It was always this open welcome. It was always, an enthusiastic welcome. And so the answer to your question is, I really don't know, like why, and even we there's like this thing in white Christianity. You're like, oh, we know the black church. They know how to worship, but we don't go in there to benefit from that. I don't know. It's just the whole thing is crazy to me.
Yeah. I often tell people that the black church is a very warm, loving, hospitable place. Not perfect, But if you are non-black and you go into a black church, you will be welcomed, you will be received, you will be embraced, because at our core is the realization that all people are created in the image of God. The black church was in America was created with that understanding at its core. And so, if you've grown up in a black church, those listening, you know that like a white preacher can come, and even if he doesn't preach good, the church mother is gonna come up to him and she's gonna say, "Baby, that was excellent. Good job, baby." That's just in the DNA of the black church, and I'm glad that you experienced that, Matthew. And I think some of it has to do with exactly what you said. You discovered the black church to be more than just a place of good singing. You were discipled there. You learned history. You learned theology. Your faith was shaped in a very profound way. So for you, the black church became more than just a caricature, right?
And the other thing too, like that I really want to emphasize is that the black church taught me how to read the Bible. Like you cannot miss the theme of oppression and God continuing to confront those who use oppression to create wealth and power. It is literally from Exodus to Revelation, right? Let my people go all the way to, the very end of judging mankind. So, again, because of the way that white Christians in America have profited off of oppression, we just don't see that theme. It is all throughout particularly the prophets, but read the Psalms. If you don't understand the theme of oppression, you can't read the Psalms. Yes. David is, on the run from this wicked, oppressive king, and it's like, we just don't have the eyes to see it. We keep preaching Psalm 23 over and over and over again, and it's good. That's fine. But there is this theme about these oppressive systems, because the reality is, if we only deal with poverty, like let's say, hey, my church is committed to giving out food to the poor, but we don't deal with the systems that create poverty in the first place, then we're going to be giving out food forever and ever and ever. Yes. And the reality is, you can give out food at your church and still be aligned with empire. You can still profit off of empire. You can still hold the values of empire, but when you really start fighting against that system that creates poverty in the first place, it's a totally different story. There is this verse in Isaiah chapter 1. I've never heard Isaiah chapter 1 preached in any white Christian space. But in Isaiah chapter 1, there's this very interesting phrase where God, he's telling the people, stop doing evil, start doing good. But this phrase it's translated three ways. The main translation is it's like cease oppression, right? Mm-hmm. But it's translated as also rebuke the oppressor, and it's also help the oppressed. Mm-hmm. And so it's three different things. In order to cease oppression, yes, we have to help the oppressed, but we also have to rebuke the oppressor. And that is what the white church has missed. And that's what I got. That's the specific thread I got from the black church, because actually I was in white churches where we did worship. Like I've been in white churches where the worship is great. I've been in white churches that are prophetic. I've been in white churches that are charismatic. I've been in white churches that are evangelical. It's interesting to me. The black church is kind of like all of the threads, we talk about, like all in one, because the black church is all of these things, But the one thing, I've never been in a white church that they have preached that thread of rebuke the oppressor. Yeah. That is the piece that we are missing across the board. I've been in a lot of white churches. I've been in a lot of black churches. That is the piece. And that's when there is this, because of this prophetic call that's on my life, when I go into black churches and I listen to sermons, I feel like almost like, I don't know how to explain it, like this warmth, like this feeling of comfort, because I'm like, these people get it. Like they're this is it. Like this is what we've been missing. Yeah. And it's like sometimes I'll preach a very familiar Bible story in the black, in a black church, but the tone is different. The angle is different, and I'm like, and I just get so much insight from it. And also I want to say this too. When I say black church, I am definitely not just saying a church, a building, or a service, because I just find that it runs within black Christians, whether I meet them on the street or whether meet them in a church. There's just this depth of fellowship, again, because of the long tradition, the prophetic tradition, and again, just the willingness to be truthful about the world that we live in.
Yes.
Unfortunately, we have built a mythology around the United States of America.
Yes.
We have told ourselves, and it's not that it's a total lie, right? You read the history books as a white person, and it's like, well, we ended slavery and we ended, Jim Crow. And it's like, well, actually, we fought against those things. But it's pitched as like, well, we're all with Lincoln now. It's like, well, we weren't with Lincoln then. Right. Almost 600,000. I think it was 650,000 people died during the Civil War to preserve that institution. So no, we didn't just end slavery. Right. Most white Christians, particularly in the South, but all over the country, fought against, where they were very much against the abolition movement. So I think we've told ourselves a mythology. And so it's very hard when you're digging into topics of race and politics and religion with white people, because we have this reticence just to be honest. Yeah. Whereas in the black Christian community, it's like, hey, listen, we've been through this. Like, let's just call it for what it is, and that to me is refreshing. And again, that is where we, in an age of post-truth, where again, Trump has taken us off the map of truth. Yeah. We need that. We've got to be anchored in the truth of history and the truth of right now. And again, I feel like the black church is like the most underutilized resource that we have.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're absolutely right. I mean, we see the assault that the Trump administration is making upon black history. We see what he's doing with the federal parks and the fees and making MLK's holiday and Juneteenth fee days at the parks, whereas before they were free. We see his assault upon black history at the Smithsonian and at the African American History Museum in DC. We see what Trump is doing. He's marching towards normalizing white supremacist narratives, lost cause narratives, minimizing the brutality of slavery, emphasizing the romanticism that you just spoke about, this lie about our founding and our founding fathers, and America is like this so-called Christian nation. And, over here, right, off to the side is the black church. We're like, hold up. Like, let's talk about real history. And, I've been involved in my past. I've been involved in racial reconciliation and racial conciliation organizations, Matthew. And I don't so much engage in a lot of those conversations today, particularly with people that are, white people that are like the first or second stage, like the racial reconciliation process, and they're still struggling with a lot of stuff that frankly, we have Google and we have AI now. Like, you can learn a lot of this stuff. A lot of it is at your fingertips. Like, I don't have to sit and continually educate you until I'm exhausted. So but back then I did used to engage in these conversations. And I would say, listen, I said at this country's inception, even before this country was a thing, during the colonial period, you had two competing views of this country, this continent. Europeans came over here viewing this continent as the promised land. Enslaved Africans came over here and viewing this continent as Egypt. Right. And those two views largely still persist today, right? You have European brothers and sisters. They see this land as this land of just pristine opportunity and just can do no wrong. And then you have the black church, right? And you have African American people, and we're like, no, let's talk about how at this country's inception, all men weren't equal, even though we were creating documents stating that they were. And you're right. You know, we're in a post-truth world, and the question is, which vision is going to win out? And I talked to you. We talked. Talk to me about your optimism.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Trump is waking a lot of people up, you know, because this is nothing about this is new. You know, let's just take the modern era, for instance, right? You have the last Civil Rights Act being passed in 1968. And, you know, it's almost like the abolition movement, Reconstruction, and thinking, wow, we did it. And then you're like, oh, wait, there's always white backlash, right? 3 years after the last of the Civil Rights Act in 1968, Nixon gets up there and he declares the war on drugs. And so instantly oppression comes right back to the Black community in the form of the drug war. So the drug war has been going on, but not just the drug war. If you look at the United States in terms of our position in the world, we have been exploiting nations all over the world, you know, for the entirety of the 20th century. Regime change and banana republics, extracting labor and resources and oil from poor nations, particularly in Latin America, but in the Middle East, all over the world, right? So I think that white people, because everything has been so good and great, where did the wealth come from? We don't care if it came from some, you know, banana farm in El Salvador where they pay the people 50 cents a day and they can't, you know, they can't survive. We don't care. We have bananas in the grocery store. Chiquita. All right. It's like, we don't really care, you know, but the Black community sees right through all that. So, because they were on the underside of that system for so long, right? We love to identify as Israel as white people, but we are much closer to Egypt. But yes, you know, so one of the things I believe is because we have sort of told ourselves a mythology about ourselves, that God giving us over to the liar in chief actually makes sense, because we've been lying to ourselves for so long. I always say this: what's the difference between us invading Iraq and Russia invading Ukraine? And when we invade Iraq, we're the good guy. They invade Ukraine, they're the bad guy. But like, we're always the good guy. Are we ever the bad guy? No, we're not, because we don't have a really right view of ourselves. And so we've always had this very touchy relationship with truth. And even the way the media reports it, the media, you know, look at this war on Venezuela. Venezuela is not bringing any drugs into America. Colombia, South America is. You know, these other countries are, but not Venezuela. Why do we pick Venezuela? Well, they just happen to be sitting on the second largest oil reserve in the world. Is that a coincidence? We've been going after Venezuela for decades, but it's like no one will be honest about it. We're just not honest. And so for us to be given over to a post-truth world, it actually makes sense in a way. And when I asked that question about why Black people, I got an amazing response. That was an education, just reading the comments on that video, why Black people didn't fall for Trump. And they're like, baby, we've been seeing it the whole time. We have seen it the whole time. And you know, I knew that, but it was interesting to hear, like, hey, this isn't new. And that's the point. The point of the film, especially, we're going back to the documentary, Trump is just the tip of the iceberg. You know, with an iceberg, you see 10% above the water, 90% is below the water. Everything that he's doing has been done. And that's why we made the thread all the way from slavery to Trump to wake us up, because the news cycle is 2 weeks. Everything is the last 2 weeks. And it's always something new, some new outrage, right? But at some point, we have to start connecting this stuff back and realizing that Trump rose to power by pulling on our racist threads as a nation, our racist resentment, our racist internal bias, some of our racist external bias, you know, overt, covert, all of it. That's the only reason he is in power today. And that's a shame. That is a shame. And guess what? Back to my optimism. Because he is taking a wrecking ball to our country, the tariffs are destroying our economy. I don't care what anyone says. You're literally arresting our essential workers in fields and in restaurants and in warehouses and in construction sites all over this country. He is destroying our economy. And it's like, people are waking up because it's finally hitting close enough to home. And honestly, I know that, so it sounds pessimistic, but the optimism is God. It says in the Bible, everything that can be shaken will be shaken. Yeah. God is shaking us awake. George Floyd, the protests, they were great, and we felt it, but it wasn't close enough to home. Now it is. He is shaking it. He is shaking this nation. He is shaking us out of our slumber. And I'm seeing a lot of people, a lot of white people who are waking up. And that's my optimism. You know, that's sometimes, well, not sometimes, it seems to be the biblical and historical pattern that God sends the prophets, people reject it, so he sends the 2x4 upside the head, and then people start to listen. And so Trump is our 2x4 upside the head.
Yeah, I was just about to ask you about some of the, for lack of a better word, conversions you've seen among white evangelicals as a result of your work, and I actually want to ask you that question on the other side of this clip, because you do frequently call out the hypocrisy of white America, the hypocrisy of white evangelicalism, and you did that in this clip here. And then I want to ask you about, testimonials of people that have hey Matthew, I voted for Trump all 3 times, but you've helped me to see that I was wrong, and I'm changing course. So I want to hear about that on the other side of this clip. So listen to this clip. This is another clip that I saw, and like my affinity and my love for this brother grew even more after watching this clip. Check it out.
I want to share what is decisively the most glaring issue with the mainstream white Christian community in America. And just track with me for one moment here. Yesterday, I received 2 requests for food donations to address the food insecurity that people are feeling right now. One from a white church and one from a white Christian nonprofit. And that's great. That's a blessing. But the insane part is that these same people are the very ones who voted Trump into power in the first place, who caused the food insecurity that they're now having to address. It's like shooting yourself in the foot and asking for someone to donate gauze to stop the bleeding. The Bible is very clear about our mandate as Christians to feed the hungry. But it's also clear about fighting against the oppressive systems that cause hunger in the first place. And this is our glaring omission as white Christians in America. And the black church, they didn't miss the assignment. They've been on the front lines of this since the beginning. But due to our deep-seated racism, we have opposed their efforts, from the abolition movement to the civil rights movement to the George Floyd protests, rather than joining them. And so now we're putting Band-Aids on the festering wound that we have created. But just imagine, for one moment, imagine how powerful it would be if we could ever come together.
So have you had people listen, white evangelicals listen to something like that or any of your other clips and inbox you, DM you hey, Matthew, I'm seeing it and I recognize it, and I am repenting, and I am horrified by my support for this guy, and I can see where my Christianity has gone off kilter. Have you had much of that?
Yeah, so I'm going to answer that question, but I do want to address something before we do that.
Yes.
One of the saddest things to me about American history is white people voting against our own self-interest. Okay. So let me back up. After the Civil War, Reconstruction era, you see a lot of fusion movements where you see poor white people and poor black people coming together for representation, right? And the response from the white elite landowners, the plantation owners, was to pit the poor whites against the poor blacks. And the whole idea, and you can hear it because Martin Luther King Jr. mentions this in his I Have a Dream speech. He says they fed them the crow, and it didn't fill their bellies, but it made them feel superior to black people. Poor white people, working class white people, poor black people, working class black people have everything in common. Yes. We spin our wheels about a nation. Literally, all we would have to do as a nation is pass universal health care and a $20 an hour minimum wage. 90% of Americans would benefit from it. Would take you 5 minutes, and 90% of Americans would benefit from that. Why can't we do that? Because we have divided poor blacks over here and poor whites over here, right? The only reason why we don't have a decent minimum wage in this country is because we divided poor whites over here, poor blacks over here. That's why we don't have healthcare. That's why we don't have any of the things that most, affluent democracies have. So what's sad is that, like in that video, we allowed Reagan and Nixon to vilify the social safety net. The way they did that was they attached welfare to black people, and then they vilified it. Not mentioning that the largest demographic that receives welfare in this nation are white people.
That's right.
So when food stamps went out in November, there was a lot of white people that went hungry. You know what I'm saying? Like we've consistently been manipulated by racist politicians to vote against our own self-interest because it punishes black people. Yep. Like we would rather punish black people than actually help ourselves. And that to me is tremendously sad. Yeah. But going back to your question, earlier this year, I got a message from a friend who viciously attacked me during 2020 was when I really took to social media, because I was like, he stood up before the votes were even finished count, saying there's this massive fraud on the scale the nation's ever known. There's no way he would have known that. And then again, 5 years later, has never presented one shred of evidence. So I just kept saying, I got on social media in 2020, and I was like, where's the evidence? Where's the evidence? Every day, and people hated me. They hated me for that. Yeah. This one guy, he was so bad, I had to block him. Well, he texted me after Trump got elected, and he said, all he said was I was wrong about Trump. And so my wife was like, don't listen to him. He's
baiting you. He's baiting you.
Baiting you. I was like, I have to call. So I called him up, and sure enough, he saw the light. I've had another friend all the way to the end was arguing about Trump and how, I don't like him, but I'm voting for him. As soon as he got elected, he started to me, he's a fascist. He's a fascist. He's a fascist. Like, and he was saying stuff at that point I wasn't even saying. I was like, whoa, I don't know what happened, but there are people who are seeing it. And the saddest ones to me, I had a friend who called me who says, hey, she's Hispanic, said, hey, I feel unsafe, I'm so sad because, she was in a part of a Hispanic community that was pro-Trump. And she's like, I'm afraid that my children aren't going to make it home from school. I'm afraid I'm not going to make it home from work, and I don't know what to do. And no one sees this, and it's like that kind of stuff is heartbreaking. So I've seen, I definitely see a few. I mean, for the most part, it seems people are very dug in, but I think that there are more people in the middle who are trapped in maybe communities, church communities, or families where they don't feel comfortable speaking out.
Yeah. And
I see more of those people who are going like, hey, you have emboldened me to speak up. Like, hey, I was seeing it, but now I think the most common encouragement that I get was, I was seeing this, but I wasn't sure, but you helped me really see it for what it is. And now I want to speak out. And that to me is the biggest encouragement. Not the people that, hey, I was 100% MAGA and I repented. Most of those people have not. I was saying there's been a few, and I'm like, wow. I mean, very, very amazing, but it does happen. But most of the people are saying, hey, you helped me understand this. You helped me to see it better. And now I feel emboldened. And I think that is really, it's a bigger encouragement, I think, than we realize, because again, the white people in general have a very individualistic view of the world. Yes. If it doesn't hurt me, yes, I'm not going to say anything. But to see so many white people who are saying, hey, I'm going to use my voice for societal change, not just for me personally, to benefit me personally, but to benefit society. Again, that's the prophetic strain of the Black church that the Black church has maintained. It's not about me. It's about us.
Yeah.
And the vision that the Lord gave me for where we go as a nation, it was like this. It was like, we will not take one step forward as a nation until we link arms with our Black brothers and sisters, Hispanic brothers and sisters, everyone who's been marginalized Native American brothers and sisters who've been marginalized by the American empire and say, we're not going forward until we all go forward. Yeah. We're not taking one more step forward until we are all moving forward and benefiting from the prosperity that this nation has the potential to provide for all of us, but it's only providing it to a very select and increasingly every day, a select number of people. And I think that's the vision that we have to embrace. It's not about me. It's about us. It's about the collective. And again, that has been the benefit, that has been the witness of the Black church, marching in the civil rights era. 1 million people going to jail in 1963 that led to the 1964 Civil Rights Act. That's the kind of moral witness. That's the kind of moral revival that we need to have as a nation.
Yeah. I agree. Listen. Eagles Drew says, man, this is so good and refreshing to hear. It absolutely is. I said this to you, Matthew, that it can be depressing, surveying the landscape and seeing, the amount of deception out there, man, and wondering man, will anybody get it? Are there any white evangelicals out there that can be, can be convinced? It can be very depressing as a pastor, as an advocate for justice, to look over the aisle and see, the same rhetoric, the same talking points, the same. And now I don't know if you've noticed, Matthew, what they're doing in white evangelicalism now is they're scapegoating Muslim people now, right? So now Islam in America is apparently the number one threat domestically, right? Virgil Walker just wrote a Substack. Others have written about how Philip Anthony Mitchell is out there talking about how Islam is the biggest threat domestically, right? He's saying this as Christian nationalism and Christian nationalist lunatics are literally at the levers of power, and they're talking about debating things. Doug Wilson, Joel Webbin, talking about debating re-implementing slavery and things of that nature. But Islam is the number one threat. And it's you survey the landscape and it's golly, it's so depressing. And then you stumble on a Matthew Pridgen. And it is a breath of fresh air. And it helps us to realize that we've always had John Browns, right? We've always had white allies and accomplices that join with us in this struggle and in this fight. And you're right. Ultimately, we will prevail because we are on the side of righteousness.
Yeah.
Right. I want to ask you a question, and I'm asking this question on behalf of one of our faithful podcast listeners, Miss 4th of July. She doesn't patronize Amazon.
I see.
Yes. So she's asking if you're planning to release Sins of Our Fathers on any other streaming platform.
Right. Sorry, I'm gonna do this to you one more time. I got to go back and say.
Yeah, go back. Yeah. No, don't apologize.
I think about William Lloyd Garrison. There was a story we wanted to put into the film. I don't remember exactly the year. About 10 years before the Civil War, William Lloyd Garrison printed over 1 million pamphlets and sent them into the South, because remember, in the South, they ran all the abolitionists out. You could not be in the body as an abolitionist. They would either beat you up or kill you or run you out. Mm-hmm. So they sent all these pamphlets into the South. And there's this story about all these abolitionist pamphlets coming into Charleston and the whole city coming together to burn them. Maybe we should read them. No, let's just burn them because, But I think about, he partnered with Frederick Douglass.
Yeah.
So Frederick Douglass didn't have the wealth, he didn't have the network, he didn't have the printing presses to get the word out. So we have to have allyship. Yeah. What Frederick Douglass had was he had the firsthand knowledge of how wicked and twisted this system was.
Yeah.
But he didn't have the means of mass producing 1 million pamphlets to send to send out that literally what was one of the sparks of that era. So we have to partner together. We have to come together. And again, from a biblical standpoint, all those racial reconciliation movements that really amounted to nothing because they were performative and not ideological, they had the right spirit in mind. We're not called, the body of Christ is not divided into black and white. The fact that we even have a black church is only because black people were not invited into white spaces, right? The six, black men who were praying, being drugged out of a white church service, starting the AME church. They were literally dragged out of the church praying. Think about how insane that is. The only reason why we have a black church and a white church is because of our sin. So we have to come together. We have to have allies. You can say reconciliation or conciliation because there's no re to it, but whatever you say, we got to come together, because otherwise, we're never going to live into our full potential as the body of Christ. Yeah. So I've gotten this question about Amazon a ton with the film. We work with a distributor. We're a tiny fish in a giant ocean. We don't get to tell them where they distribute. They do that. So we have submitted it to other platforms. We just haven't heard back yet. The other thing is it's because of it being a political film, negative against Donald Trump in a culture where Trump is putting a lot of pressure on big corporations, media outlets. We were just happy to get it out on anything. Like I wasn't even sure if it was going to be published anywhere. So it is on Prime. I know it's like the worst timing with the boycott of Prime. We're definitely hoping to get it on other platforms, but we just don't know yet. And even the distributor, they can't tell us because we're like I said, we're a very small film. They're a small distributor. Well, they're a good sized distributor, but they're not like Amazon. They don't get to sit. People are like, why don't you make it free on Amazon? I'm like, well, you don't get to go to Amazon. It costs like $2.99 or $1.99 or whatever to rent it. I'm like, people say, why don't you do it for free? I'm like, have you ever tried to talk to Amazon and tell, you're an author, you probably have books on Amazon. It's like the worst thing in the world to try to get Amazon to change something. So we're just happy it's there. But yeah, keep checking back. If you can go to the website, you can sign up for our email list because we definitely want to get it on some other platforms.
What's the website, Matthew?
sinsofourfathersfilm.com. So if you sign up for the email list, we'll definitely let you know when it releases on other platforms.
So I just put the email address. Hey, Michelle. Michelle is here, one of our phenomenal, awesome mods. Michelle is here. So I put the website. Listen, I long gone are the days when we can just buy a DVD. Remember that? Like we can just buy a DVD and pop it in.
I wish.
But
we've had people ask us that. I'm like, I don't know how I would do that, but it's just different era.
Yeah. But listen, I want everybody that can to watch this documentary. It is an excellent documentary. Like I said, I've watched it multiple times already. I'm gonna go back and watch it. And it's also well done. When he says it's a small documentary, like you wouldn't know watching it. The production is good. It's just very, very, very well made, which is important because he's competing with documentaries from what's that guy's name that did What Is a Woman? Matt Walsh. He's competing with Matt Walsh and Dinesh D'Souza, and they have like thousands and thousands of dollars. But this documentary is on par with all of those documentaries, giving out all that, all that false information.
Right.
So Matthew,
they made Dinesh D'Souza. He had to pull 2,000 Mules, the book and the film, all of that stuff because it turned out it was all fraud. And that was actually what every single person, when I was speaking out in 2020, every single person said, watch 2,000 Mules, look. And then when they pulled it and it was proven to be a fraud, it was all lies. Nobody apologized to me. That was the weirdest thing. I don't know what happened there. They're on to the next lie. It's the next lie. But yeah, just for the record, 2,000 Mules was all a lie, people. It was all a lie. And it was the thing that everyone was throwing at us. It was all a lie. And like you said, they have millions and millions and millions of dollars to tell their lies, and it's shameful. They have them. One thing that MAGA has, they have so much money. They have so much money. They get to put out all their propaganda, but it's like David and Goliath, right? Yeah. God doesn't side with the rich and the powerful. As we go into Christmas, I've been thinking about Mary and the Magnificat. It says, the rich you have sent away empty.
Yes.
Right. But the poor you have given good things. I'm like, man, if we could just read our own Bible, we'd be okay. But we read it and it doesn't register. No, the rich they send away. Oh, we're not us with the millions. No, you have to be a billionaire to be rich. No, actually, a lot of us, that applies to a lot of us in America. The rich he has sent away empty. But the humble and the poor, it's like he gives good things. So I don't know. Sorry.
Matthew, it's so interesting that you bring up the Magnificat. I just preached on the Magnificat this past Sunday at my church.
Wow. Okay.
The sermon was entitled "The Song That Welcomed the Savior."
There we go.
I'll send it to you.
I want to see it. Yeah, I don't know. It hit me this morning. I was like, man, I don't know why that Magnificat's been on my heart all day today. My thought was, I wish we could just read our own Bibles.
Yeah. That'd be nice, wouldn't it? So Matthew, what is next? And other than watching the documentary and sharing it, how can we support you and your ministry? What's next from you, and how can we support you?
Well, honestly, so the best way to support me in the mission is that, like, we don't want this film to be preaching to the choir. So if you have a white friend, maybe who is in the MAGA movement, the periphery of the MAGA movement, share it with them, because those are the people we're trying to get in front of. I like I said, I don't, not the far right, because I don't think a lot of those people are budging, but the moderate right and even the moderate left. I think that central sort of vein are the people that we're going after. We made the film on purpose to be gentle for that person. Like, the person, they're not going to turn on MSNBC. They're not going to listen to Joy Reid, but maybe they would listen to one of their own. And I always say about the film, I'm the guinea pig of the film, because I was that person. I grew up in a very conservative world. I voted for Trump in 2016. I was a lifelong Republican. Even in 2020, after all that stuff, I was like, how am I going to vote for a Democrat? Because you get so programmed that way. It was very hard. And I'm not a registered Democrat or anything like that, but I am voting Democrat until that man takes his final breath. I mean, I don't wish harm on anyone. All I'm saying is, if he is still alive, we have to vote Democrat, because we have a demented madman. And the dementia piece is really important, part of God's judgment. Trump is not the same as he was in 2016. He is showing clear signs of dementia, but he has all the levers of power. So all the levers of power of the greatest nation, maybe the most powerful nation in the world, are in the hands of a demented madman. That's our reality. And that's scary as can be, right? So my point is, the film, it was meant to be a way to reach people that, like I said, aren't going to receive something from a lefty standpoint, because I'm not a leftist. I'm just a Bible-believing Christian who believes in restorative justice. I believe in restorative. If that makes me crazy to believe in restorative justice, then the whole Bible is crazy.
That's right.
Restorative justice is a major theme throughout the whole Bible. When Laban tried to send Jacob off empty-handed, there's a scripture. The Lord wasn't going to let him go away empty-handed. He didn't let the people of Israel leave Egypt empty-handed. It's like, it's not hidden. It's in there. It's in the scriptures, right? And he says he's going to repay good for good and evil for evil. Like, repayment is judgment. Like, I don't know. It's hard. It's so hard, because we don't want to do it. It's inconvenient. It's costly, but it's the right thing to do. And I think that's the piece. And just to be clear, I am totally 100% for reparations. I didn't mean to beat around the bush there. I just think until we have some sort of real reparations, we're like the no justice, no peace thing. I don't think we're going to have any peace as a nation until we do the reparations thing, until we have the truth and reconciliation, conversation, until we really look at what restorative justice looks like. But again, if that does, I am not like, I mean, if that makes me a radical left lunatic, then fine. But to me, it makes me a Bible believing Christian. So that's the way I present it.
No, 100%, 100%.
I'm sorry. Oh, you asked how can you support me? So yeah,
Yes.
share the film with your friends. We have a podcast, the Sins of Our Fathers podcast, that we just started with
Joel Bowman.
Joel Bowman, who
Yes.
you know, he's an awesome pastor out of Louisville, Kentucky.
Mhm.
And you know, social media. I mean, I make the social media reels you know, it's all a continuation of the conversation from the film. So if you enjoy the film, you know, I make reels pretty much every day, just to continue to do all the stuff we're talking about, speak truth to power, reframing Jesus, you know, because at the end of the day, Jesus has been hijacked in a sense. But the opportunity that we have, and Jonathan Wilson Hartgrove in the film calls us out, by confronting the distortion, we get to show the true nature of Jesus. And as the distortion gets more distorted, the more the real Jesus, I hope, will come into clear view. Because at the end of the day, I want everybody to come to Jesus, but I want to come to the real biblical Jesus, you know, and not the distortion that has been really running people away from him. So to me, you know, check out the reels. You know, I'm on all like normal social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. You know, I don't know. I mean, if you want to, you don't have to, but you know, I like, this is, to me, this is, again, we're continuing the prophetic storyline that of the Black church, the witness of the Black church. I'm not Black, but I feel like that to me is the biblical thread. Instead of being distracted by evangelicalism and saying, "Oh, Christianity has lost its way," I'm like, no, it hasn't. We still have this very faithful thread, guys.
Yep.
So it's so that's, you know, I would say those three things: the film, the podcast, you know, social media. But yeah, I'm just thankful for the conversation, brother.
Amen. We support you. Black Church Chats support you. The entire Black Church Chats community, Black Church Empowered, the organization that I lead. We support you. Man, do you ever travel? Are you ever in the LA area? I mean, I remember you did tell me that you have a brother that's in San Diego, but do you ever come out here for ministry purposes or anything, you know, anything that's related to, you know, the work that you do?
I mean, I do travel for ministry when requested. So, you know,
request. We got request.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. So I need to come out and we do have we have one church actually recently requested a screening who's in LA. I'll find the name of that church and send it to you. See
Please
if you know them. But yeah, it's definitely, you know, I just go where the Lord leads, like the wind with spirit, you know, just wherever the Spirit leads.
Yeah. So much more that we could have talked about, man. You know, this is the beginning of a conversation. You are a friend of mine. You're a friend of this podcast. Man, you're just doing great work, and you're a breath of fresh air. Listen, I can take maybe like 2 or 3 questions, because as you guys know, I'm in this hotel here. Checkout time is 11 a.m. Which means I have about
time is ticking.
Yeah, time is ticking. So like I, you know, these have to be like quick Q&A, you know, kind of shotgun type questions that you're asking. If there are any questions, go ahead and put them in chat. Like 2, maybe 2, 3 at the most, but 2. You know, we can take. And thank you guys for being here. Melody, as always. Miss 4th of July, as always. Michelle Turner, the baddest mod ever. Here we go. Shout out to Miss 4th of July for the super sticker. Y'all do my heart so much good. The fact that you guys support this channel just brings me so much joy, and I love you. I love you guys. You guys are the greatest community on YouTube. Black Church Chats community is the greatest community on YouTube. Yep. Okay. That's all right. The super sticker is great. All right, y'all. So listen, I don't see any questions coming up. You guys are great. Next week on Tuesday, I'll be joined by Reverend Ash, and we're going to be talking about Chattel Jackson, the truth about Chattel Jackson. He's not a historian. He's a Confederate apologist, and we're going to bring that out when we talk on Tuesday at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Matthew, any last words before we go?
No, listen, I just appreciate you having me on, like I said, and I do like to end. I want to end with optimism, because the Lord's ways are not our way; they're higher than our ways, right? So we look, and we're also called to walk by faith and not by sight, right? So we look at what we see, and we can let fear set in, we can let panic set in, but I think we have got to be really careful as people of God that our hope is in the Lord, our trust is in the Lord. God is moving right now. He is working on people's hearts and on their minds. And he is drawing people to himself. He is using the shaking of this nation to draw souls to himself, because that's what he cares about. He cares more about souls than anything. And he is awakening us, those who will be awakened. He is awakening us. And I'm encouraged. I'm excited. In the middle of the storm, I'm optimistic that God is moving, and like I said, drawing people to himself, because we have so much potential as a nation. Like you said, these words are in the document.
That's right.
We just have to find a way to live it out. We have two documents. We got the Bible and the Constitution.
Right.
We just got to figure out a way to live it out together in true brotherly love. And in the world, it says that this is how they will know you're my disciples, if you love one another. Man, we have such great potential. If we could come together, if Black Christians and white Christians, Black people, Hispanic, Asian, Native American, we could come together, there is nothing we could not do. There's such potential. So I'm hopeful and I'm thankful for you and for your ministry, for your podcast, brother. I thank you for having me.
Amen. All right, everybody. You've heard it here. Matthew Pridgen's doing awesome work. Support our brother, and you'll see him again. All right. Till next time, guys. I got to check out of this hotel. We'll see you again Tuesday here on Black Church Chats. Y'all have a great day. Bye-bye.